Hello, good morning, and welcome back from the break. And of course, special welcome to our viewers on television. This is The Big Issue. My name is Duke Mentopoko. I'm sitting in for regular host Godfred Akoto Boafo. So, over the past 1 hour, we've been discussing matters relating to the demand for a political neutrality allowance. Not even a demand anymore, but they're demanding for its payment, actually, by government. The Civil and Local Government Service Staff Association, CLOGSAG, for the past 2 weeks have been up in arms with government for the payment of this allowance. But many have questioned, if you look at the cardinal principles of the civil service, anonymity, permanence, and neutrality, the third one, neutrality, very important. So if that is very important and significant to the very existence of the organization in which you work, should we pay you an allowance for doing your work, essentially? So like some think tanks, like of Money Africa and CDD and others, believe that this is a misplaced call. Others have also said that if you look at the conditions of service of civil servants in this country, it's a step in the right direction. CLOGSAG has been calling the bluff of almost everyone who disagrees with them in this regard. So I've been doing the discussion in studio with a former NLC Executive Secretary, private legal practitioner, Charles Adongo Bawadua, and two former members of parliament who served on the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, former MP for Gomoa West, Alexander Aban, and former Tamale Central MP, Nusaf Husseini. And they've also had executive government experience, which means that they've had the opportunity of sitting at the top, working with these civil servants beneath them per the structure of our governance system. And of course, on Zoom is Franklin Kujo, who will also be joined very soon, or in fact, we've been joined by another key actor in the civil society space from the CDD. But I would get Honorable Nusaf Husseini to finish or to complete the point he was making before we went on the break.
Well, I'll just say that because of the fact that we had allowed individual workers groupings to negotiate with government on their conditions of service, it resulted in the distortion of the pay structure. And that was the reason why the Kufuor administration tried to rationalize the pay structure in this country. Gone are the days when a typist at the Ministry of Finance earned more than a typist at the Ministry of
Health, for instance.
Or health, for instance, or probably employment and social welfare.
When they were all doing the same thing.
When they were all doing the same thing, probably were mates in school, you know. So because of that, it was thought that it was inherently unfair to be treating people equally circumstanced differently. And so the country thought that we should rationalize the pay structure. And there were certain conditions for which to come and negotiate under the single price salary structure. Market premium was one. That is, if you were providing a service of a nature that was difficult to come by, you could come back to government and negotiate a market premium. We made it a point that, look, payment must be linked to performance. Yeah. You can't just be paying people for doing nothing. So they must be linked to performance.
That has been a mirage.
That has been a mirage because sometimes the workers, the civil servants and the public servants are willing to work, but the tools with which to work are not there. So you can't blame them. You can't go there.
But
the work itself is not there.
But there's also the accusation that you don't have a comprehensive structure for even assessing output in the civil service. Unlike in the private sector where there are KPIs. Clear performance indicators, key performance indicators. If you are not meeting those KPIs, you'll be shown the door. There's nothing like that in the civil service. There
are. I started my work in the public service with the Ministry of Energy. And clearly, when Atta Mills appointed me to the Ministry of Energy, I was given KPI. One was to assess minister. Two, to work diligently to see that we could stabilize power.
That's you are the political. I'm talking about the civil servant.
No, so if you also go there, because you are the political head of the ministry, you have to give your directors KPIs.
That's when they will start working against you.
Yes, but you have to.
It's about enforcement.
It's about enforcement of those, because you have been given directives. And at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, I was given marching orders. Look, make sure that we bring Galamsey to an end. Remove all foreign operators within the because the law is quite clear. And that resulted in about expulsion or deportation of more than 5,000 Chinese from this country. Okay? And the Minister of Rules the same. So there are KPIs. I'm sure when you went to they were KPIs.
Of course.
Yes, they told you, look, this is
political appointees, they give them.
Yes, so what I'm saying is that
is
a
giving
political appointee is a public servant.
Oh, we are talking about the political appointees are not the ones demanding for neutrality allowance.
What I'm saying is,
we're talking about the civil servants.
But even the civil servants, they do have. The problem has been enforcement.
Enforcement problem.
For very many years, the system has not enforced them.
It's
they
just
have not
recently
assessed the workers.
Mr. Bauer, just recently, I think 2 or 3 years ago, that we had, for the first time, CEOs of the much battered SOEs signing performance contracts. The SOEs.
No, it's not long ago.
Well, but
long ago.
Year on year, they are making losses.
Yeah. Well, that's a different matter.
So
That's a different matter we can consider. But it's not long ago. I remember even at the time that I was deputy minister, once I addressed them at the trade fair,
and they were signing performance contracts. I see.
Yes. So it has been there. Maybe Bauer is right.
I mean, it's about enforcement.
Maybe enforcement.
At every workplace, you have to set targets for the employees. At the end of the period for which the targets have been set, you ascertain whether they have met them. What are the problems? What might have caused the inability of the worker to meet the targets?
Yeah.
In some places.
But that is not done in the public sector.
Autopilot.
You shouldn't put things to autopilot. Because I remember clearly saying that you can, you yourself as a civil servant or a public servant feel satisfied when you are able to meet conditions set for you, the performance, when you're able to meet your performance indicators. And we cannot have business as usual. And public service and public servants or public corporations must know that being a public corporation does not in any way excuse you or exclude you from benchmarking yourself, your performance.
Achieving results.
Achieving results. No, you should know that. The fact that you are funded by public resources imposes on you an invidious responsibility to justify the investment of public resources in you. But we have reversed the equation here in Ghana.
No, it's because we have some historical inertia which is sitting on us.
Which one is that?
Because for me and you, if this is a private station and it's succeeding, it started small, it's growing, there should be even more responsibility on the person sitting at Cocoa Board.
Of course.
Because it is our collective resources.
Yeah.
So he knows that if he runs it down, he's disappointing the whole country.
You see, in those days, before independence, we saw Aban or government
as the whites,
who were working against us. And that mentality hasn't changed. So in Fanti, there is a statement, and I think the person who coined it must be churning in his grave. It's a very bad thing. And it's always in the psyche of the people. That Aban wochu nase na wonhwe
abadwuma se adwuma etwe se enso yes my language as well.
Yes, and that thing is still ingrained in us. And that's why when people are in the public sector, they do little.
Yeah.
But when they're in the private sector,
the job is not for your father. That's what they say.
That's what they will tell you. I was just talking to a lady, friend of mine, who I will not tell where she is, who has just been posted to a place as in this local government actually, as social welfare officer. She goes to this place, and by 8:30 she's already sitting there and realizes that even the boss comes around 9:30. They come there, they'll be sitting there and all that.
Or drinking alcohol.
So they realize that, this is the one
who is serious.
Who is serious. So he has been passing some jobs to her to be doing. But she has realized that almost everybody doesn't come early. So the question is, should she continue with the way she has started, or should she just conform? So
you'll be discouraged.
Yes, as we think about their welfare, their salaries, and their allowances, we must also demand proper productivity from them.
Look, I'll give you an example again. as a Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, we were faced with difficulties in rationalizing how we granted permits at the Lands Commission. At that time, there was a gentleman in the private sector who was doing very well with the Chamber of Mines. We poached him. I remember many people were up in arms. We poached him to come help us sanitize that area. Dr. Tony Obi.
Yeah.
And my justification was simple that if he's doing that well in the private sector, he should bring it.
Don't do it in the
Public sector. And
usually those are the people who are frustrated.
Yes.
Because they come in with a certain private sector mentality. They come here and they see that they have to reinvigorate everybody essentially.
Essentially, they have to align them because they are, like I said, a worker goes to work at 8:30. Most of his colleagues don't come to work at 8:30. How do you work to align their interests? And the fact that they have to be working together to bring their synergies together to work together. So that's the problem. Okay. That's the problem with this country.
All right, let me go on to Zoom now and speak to Dr. Kojo Asante of the CDD. They've also had cause to speak about this. Doc, with the multiplicity of arguments that have been made, do you still stand by this argument that we don't need a neutrality allowance and that it should be scrapped?
Thank you, and good morning. Good morning to your panelists, our honorables at the studio. No, I don't think. I've heard all kinds of attempts to justify this neutrality allowance, and as I've said elsewhere, for me, it's a tautology in itself. Because you have to go back to the whole understanding of the bureaucracy. Yeah. And its place in the modern state. And once you begin to talk about a democratic state, then the way you conceive or you conceptualize the bureaucracy is even more important in today's discussion. Because you are, in a democracy, there are competing interests. And you need a state that is rule-based, that is able to apply the rule impartially to ensure that there's fairness in the discharge of public, in trying to provide public services to citizens. So the whole premise of neutrality is critical, and that's why you have a structure where you have a political class elected or appointed, and then that political class is advised, its service is supported by a bureaucracy that in its own creation is expected to be neutral. So even if you look at the Civil Service Charter itself, one of the values is neutrality. Yeah. So if you come and make a justification that the job for which you have been recruited and are being paid to do, now you want an extra pay for you to do that job, it doesn't make any sense. And that's where I think, for the problem is, I fully appreciate the frustration with pay distortions, fairness, inequities in the whole compensation structure within the public service. And all the attempts to rationalize it, like single spine and all of those things, it looks like as if any time there's an effort to try to organize that whole process, there's people go around it to create even more distortions. So I understand that. But to make an argument that the solution is to add to the problem rather than to find a solution to it, that becomes very difficult for me to justify and to support. So I accept that there are problems that we have to look. We have talked about Article 71. Every 4 years, we are here talking about ex gratia. We are talking about how do we match productivity with compensation, what are the different levels and who should get what and so on. These are all very important conversations. But if we want to address those issues, the last thing I would expect any group that wants those things to be addressed is to say, okay, well, if we cannot beat them, then we also have to join them. And that course of action is basically going to run all of us down, because already government is beleaguered. It has serious issues with paying all kinds of compensation. We know what compensation forms as part of our total revenues. We are always getting delays in releases of compensation. People are always going on strike. The more we pardon to these, distorted process of compensation, the more we are going to have these disappointments. So it might be short-lived. You get it today. Maybe the next 6 months you don't get paid. And then, you are out there on strike. The work of government doesn't move forward. Those families will suffer. So I think that, for me, and I've called that, if CLOSAC, just like TUC and everybody, is interested in us looking at these issues around compensation of public service, we should all be banding together and seeing how we can bring some sanity into the process. People have referred to the SOEs and the lack of, adequate regulation in terms of how compensations are set and all of those things. Let's have those kinds of discussions. I'm sure if we band together, we'll have enough of a strong, constituency to push for reforms.
Yeah.
But if everybody, and if the CLOSAC gets it, there are many other public services who are also supposed to be neutral. Are they also going to get neutrality allowance? Will government be able to pay? And at the end, it's the taxpayers that have to finance all of these things. And what do they get for it? So I just feel that at the end, CLOSAC is bent on it. Government is turned into a labor matter. They are just treating it as an employee-employer, contractual arrangement, and they will get it. But the implications for the civil service itself and government able to, sustain all of these expenses that are being incurred, for me, it's just we are all going to contribute to running the state down. And when that happens, we are all going to suffer for it. And unfortunately...
So, Doc, for you, there's no way around this issue. Government should just be scrapped, or should look for other ways to better the conditions of service.
Unless you go to court and make an argument under Article 191 that this is an illegal payment, right?
Yeah.
Because you see, the Constitution, if you go under the Public Services Commission, which includes the civil service, there are provisions that are meant to protect victimization.
Yeah.
Because there's an assumption that the bureaucracy is supposed to be neutral. So if somebody is doing their job and not being biased, they shouldn't be victimized. But now you are saying that I should pay you to stop you from being biased. Otherwise, if I don't pay you, be biased.
I like the way you put it.
It's not consistent. And also, I don't see how you say, okay, there are political appointees who are benefiting from certain allowances. Well, that's why they are in the political class. You cannot do the two jobs. You cannot be a civil servant and want to be also a political appointee. Because if you do that, then you are saying that you do your 9 to 9, and you want to also go and be an MP. MPs don't get that opportunity. Even if they have to do that, they have to get permission from the speaker and all of that to go and do those things.
Yeah,
but the public service, the civil service is a peculiar institution. Yes, fine. Even with all these neutrality allowance, we know that it's also politicized. So even that doesn't even solve the problem. Yeah. Right? But it is just, fundamentally for me immoral for anybody to make that kind of, argument. And it does not solve the problem which has triggered this, proposal, for instance. It doesn't solve the compensation inequities that exist and will continue to exist if we don't tackle it, formally. So I'm afraid that it might pass, but if, as I said, the only way is to try to challenge it as a constitutional issue.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. You are okay. Wrapping up.
Let me just add to what Kojo said. You see, the position of the law is not that the civil servants should not belong to a political party. The position of the law is that they should not openly manifest it in the performance of their duties. When in 2017, Kulosak sued the government, seeking a declaration that they should be allowed to openly do politics and all that, and the Supreme Court ruled against them, the court was very clear.
Just Kulosak against the...
Yeah, Kulosak versus Attorney General, sometime in 2017.
Yeah,
this is what Justice Sophia Kufu said, and that analyzes the basis why civil servants must be neutral. In her judgment, she said that to be effective, the work of a civil servant in Ghana, no matter the level of operation, requires some expectation of efficiency, discretion, loyalty, neutrality, and public trust. At this stage of our socio-political development, when political discourse is all pervasive, and rivalry can easily trigger a whole range of reactions, including even violence, it will be most unhealthy to countenance a civil and local government servant who publicly proclaims their partisan leanings in the public space. Whilst the membership of a party is their right, the open manifestation is what is wrong.
This is the judgment,
the judgment of the court.
In
Kulosak versus Attorney General.
Attorney General.
This was decided in 2017. So the fundamental basis of the job is neutrality. And if you look at Article 190 of the Constitution, there's a long list of public servants there. Yes. It is not only civil servants. The list is really very long. It includes judicial service, police, immigration service. Yeah. All the security agencies are found in it, parliamentary service and all that. So, and all this, in order to be able to effectively function, must necessarily be neutral. If you give neutrality allowance to Kulosak, it will not take long. The others will come demanding it, and they will justify it by saying, we all need to be neutral in the performance of our functions. I concede that, look, there must be a way of improving upon the remuneration of civil and local government service. That concession I made. It must not necessarily be called neutrality allowance. Yeah. How we do it, we have to engage. And moving forward, the situation where every little public service dispute, the workers go on strike, I think we need to check it. Because it is adversely affecting the running of the country. I am currently trying to register a company for a client. I'm unable to do it because the system is all down. Nobody is working. I think that once they...
Because of this agitation.
Yeah, because of the strike actions.
What has happened to the two of us? Because I'm also doing something for a client. He needs the Registrar General to do something quickly so that we can inform their partners abroad.
Don't do it.
They are stuck.
And so I think that once they have engaged in a discussion, not whether or not to set aside the allowance, but when they should pay it, then Kulosak should take a second look at the strike action and conclude the negotiation, call off the strike action. Evidently, I'm sure that the allowances will be paid. Moving forward, they may have to find a new name for it. Yeah. And don't tag it as neutrality.
But I wouldn't even say a new name. The principle has to be established and documented that it is not because of neutrality.
Exactly.
That cannot be accepted as a justification.
Especially when we have a clear Supreme Court judgment on the issue.
Yes.
Yeah, and and as I said, even the Civil Service Charter itself makes that very clear. But it's also that you don't want to set precedents. That somebody then says, because of this, and then creates even more distortions and problems. Okay. So even if it is to improve general conditions and there are other justifications, I think those are the things that has to be documented clearly as the reason why government is making these adjustments to conditions of service.
Very well. And bring you in into the conversation with some of your messages. Louis Komla at Santor says, good morning. I think government must prepare the ground to break the 8 by bribing the civil service. I say so because I say so because of how this was negotiated secretly without the knowledge of the public until the implications kicked in. Jones Adoboy from LA says, I can't come to terms with the neutral before even allowance. I wonder the brain behind it, or the rationale behind this. And they also have the courage to demand it. Whereas we have a document which spells out their mandate, of course, referring to the Civil Service Charter. Honorable Ayuba from Yagbon in Savannah says, whatever it is, the idea of the neutral allowance or neutrality allowance is misplaced. And government must use the other option. Either than that, this will not give us the needed results. I'm also in support for calls of rewriting our having a new constitution. We'll come to that. That's our next discussion. Asanko from Santa Maria says, we are not talking about the MPP elections. The Kubara Force is going out across the country. Started on Thursday. Workers of violence all around, but others are also going on peacefully. It's not on the table, but I'm sure as and when it all comes together, we'll find space on our platform to discuss what's going on in the MPP in relation to their grassroots elections. This one says there's no need to argue about whether the judiciary is dispensing justice or being biased, because the Lord God is watching over whatever we do as human beings on this. Asanko from Santa Maria. So we would draw down the curtain on the discussion in relation to the political neutrality allowance that is being demanded by the civil and local government staff. Of course, the Public Sector Workers Union have also jumped into the fray. They are watching with monitoring with keen eyes. If it's paid, they would obviously also want to be paid because they are also expected to be politically neutral. For now, though, the 1992 Constitution, since 93, of course, practically, has been the GRU norm, to borrow the words of Hans Kelsen. The laws based on which every other law draws its validity in our republic, yes, since 1993. 28th April marked 30 years of that referendum that brought our constitution. So President Akufo-Addo addressed the country. Now, he courted the support of the citizenry to back proposals for any amendment of Ghana's 30-year-old constitution to reflect the dynamics of modern-day democracy. He's of the view that despite the democratic gains and decades of stability, the country's laws cannot remain sacrosanct. The efforts must be made to seal loopholes if necessary. In an address to the nation, President Akufo-Addo maintained that Ghanaians should be open to constitutional amendments when the time is ripe. The 1992 Constitution is the most enduring, lasting over 2 decades, and earning Ghana the reputation of a beacon of democracy in Africa. In January 2010, the Constitutional Review Commission was set up to consult with the people of Ghana on the operation of the 1992 Constitution and on any changes that need to be made to the Constitution. The Commission was also tasked to draft a bill for the amendment of the Constitution in the event that any changes are warranted. But for years, or years down the line, some analysts believe portions of the document came with some challenges that need to be addressed to make it better. The President also took the opportunity to resurrect the debate and reiterated his commitment to repeal Article 58.3 or Clause 3 of Article 55 of the 1992 Constitution, which bars political parties from participating in the election of metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives. Here are excerpts of the President's speech.
The address can be considered as the President's appreciation of the 30-year journey of Ghana in democratic rule. Before its adoption in 1992, the country was under the military rule of late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, who took office from Hilary Liman in 1981. Before then, the country had recorded military takeovers in 1966, 1972, and 1979. Despite successive peaceful change of power since 1992, some Ghanaians remain concerned over the possibility of another coup d'etat. Currently, a senior police officer, ACP Benjamin Agojo, and 9 others are on trial for allegedly plotting to topple the government. Leader of Fix the Country movement, Oliver Barker-Vormawor, is also battling his way in court for making a statement that has been alleged as a plot to overthrow the government. But President Akufo-Addo, while marking 30 years of the referendum that birthed the 1992 Constitution, urged Ghanaians to eschew activities with tendencies of destroying Ghana's democracy.
There are some who, for their own parochial and selfish interests, would want to see a return to the dark days of authoritarian rule, simply because, with no respect for the Ghanaian people, they are either unwilling to subject themselves or their vision to the open scrutiny of the Ghanaian people, or because they know they will be rejected by the Ghanaian people and thus seek a shortcut to office and power. Let us strengthen our resolve to resist such persons for our common good.
Though Ghana is seen as a politically stable country within the West African sub-region, critics have bemoaned a series of human rights abuses. But President Akufo-Addo believes the country has rather progressed in all facets of life since the adoption of constitutional rule.
We have, over the last 30 years, witnessed sustained growth in every facet of national life. There have been considerable improvements in the Human Development Index. Simply put, democracy has been good for us. Today, democracy, equality of opportunity, and respect for human rights and the rule of law.
The president was, however, quick to admit that eradicating poverty has been a major hurdle.
The biggest challenge we face continues to be eradicating poverty. We still have challenges in the performance of our public services. We face threats, traditional and contemporary, to our nation's security and social stability in the form of chieftaincy conflicts, land disputes, ethnic conflicts.
30 years of uninterrupted rule with the 1992 Constitution has, however, come with its attendant challenges. Many have advocated for a need to review the document. Members of the Economic Fighters League and the Fix the Country movement have called for a total review for the president. One provision that ought to be repealed is Article 55, Clause 3 of the Constitution, which bars political parties from sponsoring candidates for local government elections. Though a first attempt to achieve this by Nana Addo was suspended due to lack of consensus, the president says he is committed to revisiting the issue.
It was and continues to be my view that the repeal or modification of an entrenched clause of the Constitution should attract widespread support to make it acceptable and healthy for the body politic. We should further bear in mind the strong attachment of the Ghanaian people to multi-party democratic elections. On the average, the turnout for national elections in the Fourth Republic has been 72%, one of the highest in the world, whilst the turnout for the allegedly non-partisan local government elections has always hovered around 30%. I've said it before, and I'll repeat it. I will continue to work for an extensive national consensus on this issue. And should such a consensus be attained for the repeal of Article 55, Clause 3 of the Constitution, and an agreement reached for political parties to participate in and sponsor candidates for election to district assemblies, at any point during my remaining tenure of office as President of the Republic, the matter will be brought back again to the front burner of our public discourse for the necessary action. I'm hoping that after completing the necessary consultations, I will shortly be in a position to announce a way forward.
So that's President Akufo-Addo ending that report by Hansen Agyeman. So we've had a constitution for 30 years. The referendum that marked its acceptance took place on the 28th of April. And it's been 30 years since that time. We're looking at this discussion from two angles. One, why efforts to review the Constitution have failed so far? Is it a lack of political will? Is it the fact that there are so many areas that were recommended? If you look at this, the white paper on the CRC report done by Professor Fiajo and my dean, Professor Tuguba and co, did the work on that. And so, at least 2 successive presidents, President Mahama, President Akufo-Addo, the recommendations has not seen the light of day. So we'll look at that. And then we'll also look at the MMDC part, the botched referendum and the attempts by the president, as we heard him try to resuscitate the debate on the repeal of Clause 3 of Article 55 of our Constitution that speaks to electing or making the position of MMDCs essentially partisan, sponsoring political party candidates to look at that. Let me begin with you, Lawyer Alban, on this issue. There are calls, in fact, strong calls for our Constitution. In fact, it's been the most enduring. But there are people today who believe that we need a new Constitution. For some, they believe that there's a Constitution that was essentially crafted with one person in mind. And we have a Constitution that essentially sets up a constitutional monarchy, or a monarchy, for instance. President makes over close to 10,000 appointments. People he may never have met, he appoints them into office. And it gives the president so much powers, winner takes all, so many things that are bad for democracy that's associated with that. So on one hand, even though it's given us our most enduring Republican democratic experience, it has so many flaws and essentially needs to be overhauled or thrown away. Where do you stand on this debate, sir?
Well, thank you very much. This debate started not today. It's been raging on, and we thank God that we have had this experience for the past 30 years.
Yeah.
But let me underscore here that the endurance of the political system, of this Constitution from 1992 to this point, is not because the document itself is sacrosanct.
Okay.
I don't think it is too different from the 1979 Constitution. But it is because Ghanaians are tired of military adventurism. That's the whole thing. That's what we must understand. So it is not the content of the Constitution which is so sacrosanct that Ghanaians are very comfortable with it, and that's why it has been there for the 30 years.
It's our affinity for democratic rule, and not necessarily
it's our desire
for democratic rule, not necessarily our love for the text of this Constitution.
Because there are internal inconsistencies somewhere. There are things like what you said. In 28th of April 1992, when Ghanaians went to the polls to either say yes or no to the draft Constitution, the transitional provisions were not even there.
Yeah.
So these are some of the reasons why people will say that, it was meant to satisfy.
I even also make the argument that the whole Constitution is just another PNDC law.
Regardless,
it came into fruition by the edict of another PNDC law.
But of course, there was a need for the promulgation.
Yeah.
Because Ghana itself came into being as a result of an act of parliament in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
So we must understand that I have no problem with that act, the promulgation of the Constitution law, which brought the Constitution into being. Yes. So my take is that we ourselves want to live democratically. And that is why it has been there for the test of constitutions. But if some people felt that the ills of society required them to intervene, they would have. The only thing is that the crop of military officers also think that, look, let the democratic experience go on. Let us be in our barracks and let us give support to whichever government that comes
in office.
So having said that, I think that was it on the 11th of January 2011 that the Professor Fiajo committee or commission was put together.
Yeah, 2010.
2010, yes.
Yeah.
So I think 11th of January 2010, yes. It was put together. We had eminent people, eminent personalities on it. Thankfully, some of them are still around, right? Professor Fiajo, very fine jurist. We have Jean Mensah, was there.
He was there.
Professor Raymond Atuguba was the researcher, executive secretary. We had the Kumunguna. All those fine personalities were on it.
If you look at the document they produced, the big one, fine document.
They did extensive
wonderful job.
Work. And then from there, I think we had the EVO Dankwa committee. That was for the implementation. And for some reason, it fizzled out, right? There were many far-reaching recommendations that they made. And I think that the time has come for us to revisit it. You asked a question whether political will is part of it. I must say yes. You get into political office and you realize that the structure as it is probably is good for you. So you just leave it as it is. The bold attempt that we'll get there, but the bold attempt that the current president did in making sure that we get MMDCs elected, and then Article 55.3, which has to do, I mean, for benefit of our watchers, our listeners and viewers, for their benefit, Article 55.3 has to do with the fact that political parties can sponsor people to get into parliament and all that, other than, that portion is what has created all the problem, other than the district and local government system. But I think I should draw attention to a statement that Mr. Johnson Asiedu Nketia made at a point in time. I think he was addressing some NDC faithful, and he said, look, the elections, the local government elections that went on in the country, we have collected, and we realized that we won majority. So in effect, practically on the ground, we are very, very partisan there. And when you go to the various assemblies, you can draw the line easily. You may not necessarily come from that area, but if you go to their sittings for a few days and you listen to their discourse, you are likely to see those who are pro-government and those who are on the other side of government. And when it gets to the time of confirming the appointed MMDCs, you see it clearly. So probably we'll have to get in there. But let's get back, because since you said that we'll deal with the MMDCs, let's leave that one and go to
whether you think this constitution is so flawed that we need a new one, or we should look at making it much more relevant. Because of course, the constitution, as the eminent jurist said in before an attorney general, the constitution is a living document. Yes.
Yes. If you look at the United States Constitution, you can read it in just 1 hour. But the literature that small document has churned out because of constitutional interpretation over the years has inured to their benefit, has helped. Unfortunately, ours may not be so, because there are many areas that the Constitution itself has made pronouncements. And so in interpreting it, you are guided by that. But in many areas in the U.S. Constitution, the Constitution itself is so silent. So the judges, some way, somehow, through their interpretation of the various provisions, have expanded it so much, right, to suit the current circumstances of, or prevailing circumstances of the people at any point in time. One of the things that we may have to look at, let us look at the low hanging fruits, quickly deal with them, because those ones, everybody is talking about them. It's trying to decouple the executive from the legislature. In fact, the bulwark of democracy itself is Parliament. If Parliament is strong, it's only then that we will say that, yes, democracy has come to stay and democracy is strong. Unfortunately, of the three arms of government, because of the current architecture of our constitution, Parliament, which is supposed to be the strongest among the three, is actually the weakest now. Because we cannot run away from the individual person's desire to use the parliamentary route to become a minister. And so there are many an MP who would not be able to stand in the face of the president and tell him that, Mr. President, this your point that you want us to do is wrong.
But what you are talking about, decoupling the legislature from the executive, I mean, it's something that we essentially departed from in the 1979 Constitution, which had that. And it was because of the 79 experience.
There was a history to it.
Yes, the 79 experience where MPs felt that ministers were enjoying more than them, and they are the ones who had gone for election and brought in the government, and because of that, they were even sabotaged. And that's the part of the parliament where we had a government rejecting its own budget. And it was also because of some of these
haven't we grown out of that
experience?
Because if we are going to allow that to still hold us back, we would not do democracy the way we have to do it.
Yeah.
We brought it, I mean, we brought this provision because of that experience.
Yes.
But should that one single experience tie us down and make our democracy just a laughingstock? Because Parliament is very weak. We cannot run away from that.
True.
And so, if it was issue of salary and conditions of service and the perquisites that go with the offices, probably we can look at it. And that's where the recommendation that the Fiajo Committee made of independent emolument committee, okay, or commission, may be relevant. So that independent body would deal with salary structures and the perquisites that go with the two offices. Once we do that, I think we would then have a more buoyant parliament than it is now.
Okay, all right. I'll come back to you. Let me go on to Dr. Kojo Asante now. On this issue of whether we need an amendment of our constitution, of course, CDD has had cause to be very much involved in this call for, election of MMDCs and the President's quest to bring back this debate. On the program, I want you to put forward to us your thoughts on these matters, these parameters of the discussion.
Thank you very much. I think the President's speech for me, I think, was welcome because it gives us a point of reflection. 30 years in any country's life, I think, requires a lot more reflection, and this should be a start. But I think we need to maybe seize this moment to do more significant reflection. Just recently, we're part of together CDD, IDEC, and our Danish partners, the Danish Institute for Parties and Democracy. We're looking at the backsliding that we experienced with democracy within the sub-region, for instance, even in Europe. And for me, the takeaway from that conversation was that there are certain desires that every society have around political arrangements, So whether it is an authoritarian regime, democracy, the issues of stability that you want, issues of inclusion are always at the forefront, welfare rights. And if that political arrangement is not delivering those things, like in our current situation where it's a winner-takes-all system, a lot of people feel marginalized, from election to election. There's a lot of victimization. There's a lot of inequality before the law, inequities, inequality. So when those political arrangements, no matter what the intended benefits of those political arrangements are, if they don't address some of these both material and non-material needs, there's always people are going to question whether or not the framework, should be maintained. And that's really where we are. And it's not just Ghana. It's happening everywhere where people feel excluded, people feel they haven't benefited. I mean, it's on record that, of course, this is the longest surviving constitution. Yeah. And there's a lot to celebrate because certainly there have been many, many improvements in terms of political, socio-economic rights and also material benefits over the years. But I feel very strongly that our democracy has gone stale, and a lot of our problems have become intractable, and we are not finding solutions to it. People feel very much that whatever system we have put in place, it does not benefit them. It does not address their needs. And in that particular conversation we're having, Dr. Bombardier made a point which I thought was quite profound. Why is it that it is so hard currently in a hung parliament for political party actors to come to some acknowledgement that they need to work together to address basic needs, like health, education, why is it a problem for you to build consensus on a particular issue? That has, in a way, even nothing to do with democracy. Yeah, it's just common sense, right? Yeah. And yet we have created all these structures and incentives that makes it so impossible for those kinds of things to happen. So what we have missed in this understanding of democratization is that we've accepted the idea of it, put in the framework, but we have not built the institutions and the political culture that should facilitate, it to deliver the benefits that we want. And that we are stuck. I mean, Honorable Aban mentioned the 79, the Liman, the rejection of the budget, and why that created this hybrid constitutional arrangement that we have. And the fact that everybody keeps referring to that. And even the CRC report, that particular issue, which was central to reorganizing, the political incentives, was still left out because people were still opposed to it. So there are, when people call for a new constitution, you can redesign the constitution with, definitely the executive is too dominant, and there's a lot of issues we have to look at, some of the Kenyan examples and so on, and try to create a proper checks and balance system. But the point is that even when you do that, if you do not build a political culture that says that, we can have different positions on these things, but it's important when, the country is facing these crises and challenges, we can sit down and talk. We can be decent with each other. Those kinds of political culture, the consensus building, the coalition building that you see in the Scandinavian countries, which have been developed for many years, it doesn't come by chance. It has to be deliberate. It has people, young politicians who are coming up should understand that this is the way business is done here, right? Those things, those kinds of rules and institutions and practice and culture that needs to be built has to be deliberate. It has to start right from the parties and the party's orientation. We haven't done that. We keep creating more divisions. I mean, the way our elections are going, it is nobody can not that very soon you can have a one party dominate parliament and a president that comes from another party. We nearly had it in 2008. All right. So it is not out of place. If that situation comes, are people going to be able to, work together where you have to work with an opposition parliament, for instance? So it's almost like our political parties are an instrument for multi-party democracy, which is the parties themselves. We have to have some deep reflection and deep introspection that if they are going to be the vehicles for which we consolidate our democracy, then there has to be massive changes to the way parties are oriented currently. So for me, yes, we do constitutional review, but I also believe that the people have been denied so long of the full benefits of democracy that it needs a jolt, a kick. And that's why the issues like MMDC for me comes in.
Yeah.
You can't have a democracy that is not bottom up. A democracy that is top down cannot work.
But can we get the kind of consensus that the president is suggesting and keeps suggesting, that until we get that kind of consensus, we may not have this referendum about, and even the dividing line for this discussion, partisanship or no partisanship?
I think everybody, for a consensus to be reached, everybody has to move.
Okay.
Currently, if you look at the CDD survey, it's very clear that people don't want partisan elections at the local government level. We just completed end of last year a 16 regional consultation where we are talking to everybody, political parties, chiefs, opinion leaders, youth, all manner of people, and there is a complete rejection of party politics at local government level, even though everybody knows that it's partisan. The local government process is partisan. So there's a deep problem that has to be confronted. So I welcome the engagement and the consultation because, like Honorable Aban said, the Constitution has not survived because it's a brilliant document and just by itself it delivers. It's because people were prepared to stick by it. The elites themselves have a consensus that they want to live by it. So for me, even as we think about the very complex process of changing the rules of the game at a higher level like the Constitution, which is not an easy task because there are all kinds of interests that you have to forge, reconcile, organize, and people understand that these are things they can live by. Even as we think about that, we should take opportunity to give this democracy a jolt. And I think that for me, making the MMDCs elected is important, but also that even if you do, cannot deliver development if you don't address broader local government reforms, which when we went around, there are many of them. The whole process of local government is completely dysfunctional, and everybody will tell you. So there are many things to do. And the other issue, which I think is something that myself, Honorable Nusa, and many others are working on, is to do with political party financing.
Okay.
Because that you see, if you don't address, which is basically the root of the corruption, if you don't address the monetization in politics, the cost of financing party campaigns and so on and so forth, and the transactional nature of politics as it's become, then you cannot have any chance of ensuring that anybody that gets into government would give fidelity to the public interest, value for money, all of those things, and the neutrality and all of that stuff. It's not going to happen. So we have to tackle it at the roots. And these are all major reforms, but they are essential for holding the democracy even as we try to fix the whole car.
Yeah, true.
And that's my, that's the approach that I think that even as we're thinking of a root and branch, review, we have to take advantage of the opportunities to make some serious reform in the short term, in the short to medium term, so that we can keep this vehicle going.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kojo Asante. We'll take a break here. When I come back, we'll still continue with this discussion on the 1992 Constitution. We're back after the break. Stay with us. You're welcome back. This is The Big Issue right here on City TV. Of course, let's bring in some of your comments in relation to the Constitution debate or discussion we're having. Kweku from La Paz says, I'm totally against the politicization of local council or local level elections because the NPP and NDC over the years have not accounted properly at the national level. AU Farouk, Tamale North. Seriously, the 1992 Constitution has been characterized by inconsistencies of our leaders and our current governance who they've always used the law to suit their parochial interest rather than the interest of the state. Okay, these are some of your messages. I'll come to Honorable Yunus Afsini on this issue of constitution, constitutional review, and then maybe we can start a discussion around the local level elections, partisanship or not, with you.
Well, so the president made a commemorative speech a few days ago, and I think that that was quite refreshing in the sense that it gave us a historical antecedents from where we are coming from. And so, but the democracy, yes, our democracy has not been that perfect, even though we are all enjoying the benefits of a 30-year constitutional rule. We have had lapses here and there. Our constitution, which is the basis for our constitutional democracy, has challenges. It was designed to be a political constitution. It was designed to secure us the stability that we needed after a long reign. Our constitution itself is about 70% the 1979 Constitution. There are just a few additions.
Yeah, that's why I said that it's not materially different.
Yeah, so it's not materially different from the 79 Constitution. And so the problem is that if we had tried the 79 Constitution, probably there would not be the need for a 1992 Constitution. But we didn't try. I mean, they didn't leave. They just stayed in office for about 20-something months, and that was it. And so, because it was principally designed as a political constitution, it invested a lot of power in the executive. I mean, you must understand that we're coming from a military dictatorship where we had an overburdened head of state. Yeah. And he was going to transition into a democratic rule, a constitutional rule. So the constitution had to be tweaked in such a way that there would not be marked difference between the way he ruled us as a head of state and the military dictatorship and a constitutional order. So a lot of power, everything. And that is the problems that we're having to deal with. Because the president is virtually a monarch, a constitutional monarch. He appoints everybody. And everybody, you have to, when he was deputy minister, when I was minister, you just had to look to the president in acting because you had to dance a certain way because if not the next day...
authority. The almighty appointing authority.
If not the next day, you'll be out. And, you know, so it doesn't matter whether you perform or not. You know what is, look at what is happening in South Africa. You can take it as an example of what can happen to Ghana. That so much power invested in the president can lead to an incompetent government. And so Jacob Zuma, because of state capture by the Guptas, removed all competent ministers and put people who would pander stooges to the dictates of the Guptas. So you can, because of the power vested in the president. So clearly, that alone is a manifestation of the fact that we need some changes. I mean, why in God's name will you think that the president should be appointing the head of the police service, the IGP? Why? And you know that is that IGP and his institution that is responsible for the maintenance of law and order. And you know that we are in the partisanship, president administration, arrangement. And so if the president appoints an IGP and members of his party misbehave or breach the law, how is the IGP going to act? Okay, if he acts against the wishes of the president, will he continue to stay there?
Yeah, Governor of Bank of Ghana.
Governor of Bank of Ghana. If he says, I'm not going to lend money to government, you need to raise the money through taxes, will he continue to be there? Will he continue to be there? Just the same thing with the MCs. So whether an MC is good or not, if he doesn't pander to the wishes of the appointing authority, he goes. A minister. Okay? So clearly, our constitution has huge... The Electoral Commission, we have set up an impartial arbiter to determine the leadership of the country through elections. then we have vested power in one person. What should concern all must be decided by all.
Yeah.
So why is it that? So that clearly, we left a gap, a lacuna in the appointment to the Supreme Court. We left a lacuna, a big lacuna, and hoping that no president will do what we feared. But presidents are not angels.
Yeah.
A president argues, so there's no gap, there's no cap on the limit to the Supreme Court. So appoints. So you are having to deal with a situation where even judges empaneled as a Supreme Court for dealing with a matter are judges who have been appointed solely by a president. So there are serious gaps. There are serious gaps. The SOEs. The SOEs. What is democracy about? Democracy is nothing if it doesn't deliver dividends. If it doesn't deliver public goods. If the health of the people don't improve. If the security in the country doesn't improve. If education is failing. If there's no prosperity, people are becoming poorer. I mean, people who question the legitimate reasons, the reasons why they even went democratic at all. Yeah. And just recently I heard a known, renowned presenter saying that we need a benign dictator. Did you read it?
Yes.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked that someone would say
but
that.
His words were benevolent dictator.
And I was shocked. How can a dictator be benevolent?
People cite the example of Paul Kagame.
No.
But it is not true.
Kagame is not a dictator. So there's a constitutional arrangement in Rwanda, and he follows the constitutional arrangement. It's just that it's a pragmatics. Okay.
But he also has so much power centered in him.
Yes, he has. Look. But that Rwanda's history is not Ghana's history. You need that power now in Rwanda to stabilize it.
Disappearance of opposition leaders.
The fractures are still there in Rwanda. You know that?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know that? Yes. So Rwanda is not Ghana. So we don't need a benevolent dictator. And so for me, that is why, yes, our democracy has endured 30 years. Yes, we have been able to change governments. Yes, there have been incremental improvements in our lives. Yes, we are seeing more rules. We can then demand accountability, even though sometimes we don't get. Okay? We can sit on radio and talk and lambast, sometimes insult, sometimes use derogatory language on our head of state. We couldn't do that. So yes, these are the benefits, the freedom of expression, even though not perfect, but we enjoy it. The Constitution requires review. It requires review. And like I said, the CRC clearly established that. You have said that they made far-reaching recommendations, far-reaching, to move our constitution from a political constitution to a development constitution.
Yeah.
Why do we continue to pay chief executives of SOEs when they are recording losses? Are they not supposed to be paid through the gains that they are making? And when they make gains, they expand. When they expand, they create employment.
No, but the point is that if you have the president appointing the board,
yes,
and indirectly appointing the CEO,
yes, directly appointing the CEO, sometimes even directly appointing the CEO.
No, let me even say indirectly, because he will just tell the board that this is my candidate.
Sometimes they even announce the CEO. Sometimes government announces the CEO, contrary to the rules of company law. They are not the CEO.
So how does the board
operate?
I mean,
so the CEO
effectively check.
The CEO takes his power from the president. The board members take their powers from the president. How can the CEO pander to the wishes of the board?
Improper corporate governance.
Improper corporate governance. Yeah. Improper. Yeah. So you need a change. I mean, like, there is no doubt about that. But whether it should be a total overhaul of the Constitution or a gradualist approach is the debate now. I believe there should be a total overhaul of the Constitution done strategically.
Yes, but the thing is that, in our minds, the political watchers, we all know that we wanted to satisfy Jerry Rawlings.
Yes.
At the time that we're transitioning.
We wanted to create a stable country.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, it has become anachronistic to keep the Constitution.
That's why I said that we need a total overhaul of the Constitution. Do we actually need Article 78 in our Constitution? Was the one experience where Liman's budget was rejected enough to change the system of government in this country
to a hybrid system?
It's a hybrid system. Is the hybrid system actually working? Is it not resulting in a weakened parliament? So we need to look at
let's look at the MMDCs. So
yes, for MMDCs, well, I think that there's unanimity in the fact that we need to appoint our MMDs, elect our MMDs. There's unanimity, but the difficulty, and I disagree entirely with His Excellency the President. The difficulty is the president wanting them to be elected on partisan lines. And you know, in Parliament, we were there together.
Yes.
A bill was introduced to amend Article 243(1) of the Constitution.
Yes.
We said that, well, Article 243(1) of the Constitution cannot go alone. Immediately you elect a DCE, you have to remove his tenure of office. You know, under the appointment system, he has 2 terms of office. If you elect him, he will be like a member of Parliament. He can go until the people reject him.
Yes.
So you have to deal with that. The president can no longer sack him, because the power to appoint includes the power to disappoint. But the president will not be appointing him. He will be appointed by the people. So that article of the Constitution that deals with sacking, that is Article 243(1).
Also have to go.
No, I think B will have to go.
Let me help you.
It has to go. So clearly, we need to look at the Constitution. Let me read the Constitution to tell you. And Frederick Hayek, a renowned economist, who engaged in running debates with Milton Keynes, has said that it is presumptuous to think that you can use central planning for the purposes of eradicating poverty. No, you can't.
Local level.
It should be bottom up.
Bottom up. You cannot use central planning. You can't do it, because the people, the peculiar situation of the people, the facts, the data that the people require to be able to chart their own development is there at the local level. The things that confront them is there. That is why the Constitution even recognizes that. Let me read the provision of the Constitution and see. Article 245. Article 245. Parliament shall by law prescribe the functions of the District Assembly, which shall include, listen, the formulation and execution of plans, programs, and strategies for the effective mobilization of resources necessary for the overall development of the district. So who is responsible for the overall development of the district? The District Assembly.
Yeah.
It's not government. Now, then, and 2, or B, the levy and collection of taxes, rates, duties, and fees. Clearly, the architecture for an effective local government administration has been provided in the Constitution.
Yeah.
But somehow, because Article 243(1) says there shall be a district chief executive, and district chief executive includes a metropolitan or a municipal chief executive. That's what Article 295 also says. There's a definition.
That's part of the internal inconsistencies
in the Constitution. Now, the district chief executive for every district, there shall be a district chief executive for every district, who shall be appointed by the president with the prior approval of no less than 2/3 majority of members of the assembly present and voting at the meeting.
Yeah.
Then you have the local government administration, 2/3. Then you have the local government act, who says that the district assemblies shall be constituted by elected members of parliament, and 1/3 members of that assembly, elected members of this assembly representing the various electoral areas, and 1/3 members appointed by the president. And then you need 2/3 to approve a nominee of the president to become a district chief executive. So in fact, you only need 1/3 elected members of the assembly together with the 1/3
by the president.
Yes. Problem. So you have people who have been nominated district chief executives, and they can't perform, but they can get the 2/3 approved. And they wait. The district chief executive,
and they are not accountable to the people.
You don't elect me.
You didn't elect.
You didn't elect
You didn't put me in
You
office.
didn't put me in office. How can I be accountable to you?
And
they actually wait. Look, even in the face of Article 245 of the Constitution, district assemblies, even now as we speak, are waiting for government releases.
Yes, and sometimes these common funds
they take
go
forever.
there, apart from the delays, they go there with instructions attached.
Thank you so very much. Sometimes they even spent,
use it for X, Y, Z.
sometimes they even spent at the central level.
When the local authority itself knows the priority areas they might put the money. So these are the things that...
So I think that, you see, why I don't think that we should encourage partisanship at the local level is that because of the level of partisanship, he knows, my good brother knows, that a lot of good people in this country are running away from partisan politics.
No, but even at parliament level, it has become so, I mean, the financial outlay has become so prohibitive that some of us are becoming endangered species and we are getting extinct.
So, you see, and then when you...
There are a lot of things that
that's
we need to talk about.
Dr. Kojo Asante said. Because of that, we are working, I mean, to see whether we cannot put some levers, some controls on how people spend to get to political office. How can you spend close to $1 million to get elected to parliament?
And when you get to parliament,
And
your salary is far, far less.
And then a president will have to spend not less than 4 million.
4 million Ghana cedis.
No, why do you think people are not hijacking the parties? That some people can misbehave and they cannot be sanctioned. Why do you think we have corruption in the system? Because some people think that they are entitled to those projects because they put the government in office. So that's the problem. So all this we must be able to change. To change it, let's make our districts, and the Constitution says so, the institutions responsible for our development at the district level. To be able to do that, we must elect our district chief executives. To elect them, we need not go partisan. Let's open it so that people, lecturers, researchers, doctors who do not want to engage in partisan politics, but who have something to contribute towards the development of their districts, can put themselves forth for elections on their own merit, on their own capacity. Okay? And then get elected and not be tied to the apron strings. Because if we allow the partisan politics at the district level, I'm telling you, the end result will be that the central government will still be controlling everybody.
One funny point is that, you know, because of the monarch system that we had in our mind, the president does not even pay tax because it's just like the queen.
Yeah, doesn't pay tax.
Right? Yeah. But here, we are dealing with a republic.
Yes.
And the ultimate beneficiary is the state.
Yes.
Even though we agree that in our system or architecture of our policies here, the president is the personification of the state. I think the president must pay tax as an example for everybody. But you know that as it is now, the president doesn't pay tax. And then issues of the independent constitutional bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you want them to be independent,
It is really
then
independent.
probably
Make them truly independent.
yes.
It's very independent. So
It's very important.
So in France, Macron and you know the case of Macron and one of his soldiers.
Yeah.
Yes, he stood his ground and said, look, this one was wrong. Just recently I was watching Obama and the former head of the mission that killed Osama bin Laden. And you could see clearly, Madame Albright, as a former said, Minnie,
Secretary of State.
Minnie. You see, so you need to create those, an opportunity for people to be able to serve the states.
As we speak, the British Prime Minister has been charged by the police.
Because for breaking common rules.
Yes. So how dare the IGP charge the president?
You will sack him the next day.
I mean, so I think we must take the bull by the horn.
Yes.
Okay, the time has come where we have to agree that all our endeavors is to make sure that the people in Ghana become the better off for it. And this whole business of everybody trying to venture into politics is because probably Ghanaians are not angry enough, and they have seen that the way to riches is through politics. Okay? Because it doesn't make sense that you spend so much money, okay, and then if we look at it from the point of view of your salary,
you're not going to
you
get that back.
spend more than
You're going to get
probably
back.
twice or thrice more than.
Says 4 million Ghana cedis to run in parliament, $100 million.
Yes, to run
For presidency.
Yes.
That's
Huge, ridiculous.
Right. Okay.
But let me add to what he has just said. You see, we say this, there are no jobs, but we're not drawing the linkages. You have SOEs. SOEs are not profitable
At all.
They're
Only
not.
a few of them.
But you sell it to a private individual, and immediately it becomes
That's
profitable.
what happened. We don't want to do the Russian thing, but we're saying that we don't want to do the Russian thing. But if you are a government who is interested in creating jobs, and the problem of the youth is that they finish school, they can't get jobs to do. And then you create an SOE. The SOEs are only interested in reinvesting state public resources in themselves. They're not expanded, they're not doing anything. They're not innovative, they're not creative. So that is why we have, and they are not creative, nobody can remove them. Because immediately you start gossiping about their incompetence, they run to the president.
The president will be removed.
You'll be removed from the board. You'll be removed from the board. And so this is the problem. And the fact that we are not performing, we are not getting the prosperity that we need, the fact that poverty is now deepening, the fact that there's corruption, and he still said that in so many ways, but that is the corruption. That if you spend so much in getting into parliament, to getting into politics, you must get that money back. It's an investment. Not so. How do you get it back?
Okay. All right. Let me go on to Zoom now. Frankly, you have the next 3 minutes to comment on this issue. It's unfair to you, but we'll come back to you on this issue. Well, we just have 3 minutes to go on a break. So actually 2. So
that's fine. A lot has been said, and I associate myself with most of the comments. Let me just say that, somewhere 2013 or 2014 it was, I was part of a debate the Africa Report put together here in Accra, and essentially the question was whether democracy or development, which was preferred on the African continent, and close to 2/3 of Africans that were assessed or reached said they preferred development. It struck me that the reasons why many Africans were obviously actually preferred the development to democracy essentially was that they probably did not care pretty much who was at the helm of affairs, as long as they can get their 3 square meals a day. They were interested in the basics of life. Now, the challenge I have with our constitution is that it does not seem to, and of course, what I call the children of the constitution. In this case, those who somehow managed to shepherd the constitution into being respected, being respected, essentially do not have the necessary KPIs. The key performance indicators that we can all collectively say, look, we think if you are government, if you come into government, you need to get certain basics right: water, good roads, education, maybe electricity, and healthcare. These basics must be the ones that guide us into having, delivering what I call development to people. But unfortunately, because of the combative nature of our politics, and probably the competitive nature of our politics, we tend to be swayed by what I've now come to call sloganeering politics, which essentially says, I'll give you this if you vote for me, I'll do this if you do this for me. But not that fact, after a while, you realize that most of that was just smokes and what's the word? Essentially, it was a smoke screen.
Yeah.
I think it's about time we invested in ourselves, in basically questioning or demanding from the political office holder a essentially what we think should be an ideal way of life for every citizen in the country. Are you fixing the roads to a level that everybody can appreciate and say, well, there's been some proper value for money exacted as a result of this road construction? Are we getting water, treated water to people everywhere so that they can say that, well, they have some modicum of life that resembles civility? So there are quite a number of things that we should do. And I think that to exert value, we should start questioning the basis of some of the decisions our leadership make. I obviously have been on record, and I think many have as well, that we didn't need the creation of 6 additional regions because it was not based on any scientific, proper economic value for money analysis. It was just supposed to extend the executive's rule or the executive reach to the nook and cranny of this country, which is what exactly might befall us when we decide that we want to have representation across every part of the country. I'm not saying we shouldn't have politics in our local governance. We should, but the excessive nature of our politics should not be transported there. But I'm not entirely against having people represent themselves or political parties at that level as well. Everything must be done in moderation.
Okay, thank you. We'll be back. We need to take a break now. We'll take a break here. When I come back, we'll get into the final moments of today's edition. We'll back after the break. Stay with us.
Hello, my friends. My name is Calcate Toothpaste.
Wow.
I was made to be gentle on your gum, but protected. I will protect your teeth from cavity, make your teeth whiter, stronger, keep your mouth fresh all day. And best of all, I'm strawberry flavored. So put on a smile and try me.
That's amazing.
Just try me. That's my job.
If you say so, jump on my brush. Makes your teeth stronger, chicky whiter, chicky stronger. Yay! You did it!
I'm glad you like your new toothpaste. Don't forget to brush both day and night.
Calcates. Happy smile.
Oh, you're welcome back from the break. So we'll take wrapping up comments in relation to the discussion around the 1992 Constitution. So, of course, let's look into the next 30 years. We've made several arguments. For you, what would work? New Constitution, or we should take the constitutional review process seriously and make the necessary changes to make this Constitution robust enough to take us through the next 30 years of our democratic journey.
Yeah, thank you very much. But if we say new constitution, doesn't mean that the provisions within the current constitution are bad.
No, new constitution in the sense of maybe a fifth Republican constitution. You know, that people like, Fix the Country and the rest who are saying that this constitution is not fit for purpose. It was born out of a transition into democracy. It served this purpose. Let's sit down and draw up an entirely new constitution.
But the Republican status came as a result of the epochs of, or the truncation of constitutional rules that we have. Once we have not changed from political rules, we cannot say we are going to have a fifth Republican constitution. No. Okay. It will still be the fourth Republican constitution, okay? The reenactment of it, or the amendment, or whatever it is. So what we are looking for is a new development-oriented constitution, and not necessarily a political constitution, right?
Yeah.
So that is where our focus should be. And in doing that, we must even look at the amount of money we spend in getting into political office. Do people get elected because they have been able to dole out money, or they get elected because they have something to offer? I can assure you, now we have elections going on. And here it is not only for the MPP, it is for everybody. It's a Ghana problem.
Yeah.
I'm telling you here, if I may do my own kind of confession, you will sit out there and sometimes think that the problem of Ghana is because the leaders are not doing well. You get into leadership and you realize that the problem of Ghana is not about the leaders, but it's about the people. Because the leaders are actually reflecting the lifestyle of the people and the thinking of the people. Let me tell you, I mean, using myself as an example so that nobody can beat me up, it's me. You get into politics, you want to do it so well that all you require is that you have the single-mindedness to work for Mother Ghana. But if you are not going for funerals and all those kind of things, forget it. So you don't even have the time to think.
Yeah.
It becomes autopilot. You just follow. And so long as you want your position, you have to go and do that. And the second thing is about monetization. Anytime that they see MP Didi. Yes, and you must go and give money.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I tried very hard to live within my salary and nothing more. Right? If you go and don't give the money, then say, hey, let's vote against him. And so you have people who are going into politics not necessarily because they want to serve the people, but because they want to pursue their personal interests over and above the people. And if we don't get these basics right, we can change the constitution, everything. If we don't change our mindset about who government is. And those of us who think that we can just take advantage of the people's ignorance, a time will come that they will be very wide awake and probably exact it on us in a manner that we may not be able to contain. So all these things come together so that we can fashion out a proper constitution for ourselves. We need the overhauling of this constitution, but we even need the change of mindset of Ghanaians.
Very well. Okay.
So democracy and development are not mutually exclusive.
No.
They are not. If you have effective and efficient democracy, it will deliver development.
That's not.
Because if you talk about development and you don't need democracy, you need development. How are you going to hold your leaders accountable for the public resources? How are you going to do that? So you need democracy for development. I mean, so people must understand that. And I agree and I share entirely with my brother Aban here. Why is it that we have a country where people even don't question your source of wealth? If you are a politician.
You get into politics and overnight you are rich.
What
nonsense is that?
What country is that? That you will see somebody dissipating resources and using resources in such a way that you cannot simply comprehend.
But your people themselves expect you to do that.
To do that.
I'll ask you. So
what country are we building? Yeah. I mean that has always agitated my mind. What country are we building? That people expect that when you get into politics, you must be fabulously rich.
Overnight. Without any explanation.
I mean, so that is the problem. That is the problem that we face as a people. And that we give them in their state of poverty.
Yeah. It's about what you eat today, not.
Yes, because you see, because you are getting the money and you are getting it in such a way that you are depriving them of prosperity, of development. You're not creating the necessary jobs, but they need the money. So you go and give it to them to spend in the day and continue to be poor.
So addressing the structural problems.
I have always said that much as every individual tells himself that I want to gather money to be able to build a house, to be able to buy a car, they should also see Ghana as a person. It wants to gather money to be able to build roads, to be able to build schools and all that. But the people down there want you, the politician, to go and give them the money That would...
When I was an MP, I was building schools. And one day, and toilets, and getting people... one day I went to a meeting, and one young man got up and said, well, you must eat before you go to toilet. When you go to school, you must pay your school fees.
So give him something.
Give us the money.
Interesting. Let me go on Zoom and talk to Dr. Oduasai on this issue, particularly on the part about electing MMDCs. The president has directed his call for it to be done on partisan basis. What's your expert view, Dr. Oduasai, and how do we get back to the point where, as government and the president has been clamoring for, we have a national consensus on this matter?
Thank you very much. I think that the issue is clear, that the last straw of our democracy is to have the local levels elected popularly.
Yeah.
And if you want to elect them popularly, that is the chief executive. You know that in our constitution, it is clear that partisan politics is out of the way when it comes to local government. But when you look at the consistency in governance, if the number one gentleman is elected on partisan basis, MPs are elected on partisan basis, regional ministers are politicians, why is it that we cannot get chief executive to be politicians? That is the other side. But the issue at stake is election of MMDCs is one thing, and then electing them on partisan basis is another matter. We can do two at the same time, or do one before the other. Fortunately, in our constitution, the second one requires a referendum, which is electing them on partisan basis. And then once you choose to elect them on partisan basis, you have introduced broader local governance reforms, which what it means is that the assembly members would also have to be elected on partisan basis. That is why I am of the view that building consensus on this matter is critical, especially if we want to start with electing them, which means we are amending Article 242 of the Constitution. That requires parliamentary amendment, which is easier, except that looking at the current parliament that we have, we need the two parties to agree. Once we build on the consensus, then the rest is for Ghanaians to decide whether we should elect them on partisan or on partisan basis, which requires then a referendum. I think that is how we should approach it. But I perfectly agree with the president. Now look, it is time we elect. Let us build a consensus. The question then is the how. The how is to introduce a bill in parliament that will call for an initial amendment of Article 242 to pave the way for the election of MMDCs. And that is a parliamentary activity. Once we are done with that one, then we move to the next step. So I think I agree perfectly that chief executives would have to be elected. And we've gotten to a point where if we don't elect them, our democracy will be in shambles. Development will elude us because the current constitution we have, when you look at the constitution, it is a stability constitution. It helped us to transit from a military government to a constitutionally elected government. It has stabilized the system up until now. But if we really want to develop, then these are the areas of the constitution we need to tweak to move from stability to development.
Okay. So, but must it necessarily be the position of government that we need to do this on partisan basis?
That should not. But you see, nothing also prevents government from expressing its view on the ideal situation. What government thinks is the ideal situation. So that I see it as an expression of view.
Okay.
I'm sure government and president knows that it is a decision that Ghanaians will have to take when we go for referendum. But he is saying that what I think must happen as a lawyer or as a government is that we should elect them on partisan basis. That, of course, does not become the law. That, of course, does not bind Ghanaians. He has expressed his views and he's entitled to his views.
But he's made a point, Doc. He's made a point that if we have this sharp division, then there is no need for it to go to a referendum. In fact, it is on the basis of the lack of consensus that the proposed referendum was watched and it never saw the light of day. And the president is advancing the same line of argument this time again.
You see, his argument is on consensus. It's not consensus about election. His argument is on consensus is about the two major political parties and key stakeholders in Ghana agreeing that we have to commence the process. In fact, what stalled
then that's
the
not
other
in
process?
dispute. That's not in dispute, is it?
Is it? I think that is in dispute.
Really?
I think that is in dispute because the traditional authorities, remember, there was a president of a House of Chiefs that came out clearly to make a statement, and also the opposition NDC also came out to make a statement. So I think that this is a Ghanaian situation. This is a Ghanaian matter. I am of the firm belief that we should open the conversation again. We should build a national consensus around the subject. And the national consensus must even include the process or the approach. How do we go through the process of electing MMDCs? And especially when that will lead to broader local government reforms. And I think that is where the consensus building is coming.
But so how do we approach? So how do we approach this consensus? A national conference, as it was done in the shape of what we had recently with the Galamsey issue. Do we form a commission to go around taking views? How do we approach this national consensus that you are interpreting from the viewpoint of the president? In fact, let me add that the General Secretary of the president's own party, at the height of the debate, indicated that there are a lot of the people in the MPP who didn't like this suggestion because it was going to take away a lot of government jobs from party folks.
That I cannot fault him for that because he is speaking for the truth. I mean, that's what is going to happen. I think that we need a bipartisan national committee, bring in the CSOs, bring in the chiefs, bring in eminent Ghanaians together, and let this bipartisan group build the consensus. Let us consult Ghanaians, and I think we'll be able to have an agreed broader roadmap, which will be bought into by the opposition NDC and the other political parties, including the National House of Chiefs, so we can move forward. This is not something that the government can do it alone. The government needs other key stakeholders. So we should set up a national bipartisan committee or commission, bring in the CSOs, bring in the traditional authorities, and let us build the consensus. The consensus must include a roadmap. How do we proceed after amending 242 to elect chief executive? How do we do the amend 55.3? And then how do we amend the subsequent legislations that would open the system up for assembly members to also be elected, whether on partisan or non-partisan basis? And we should also know that the outcome of the referendum on Article 55.3 would determine or would influence the other broader local government reforms. So I think that it is more of local government reforms and democratization of our local government system than the election of MMDCs. Election of MMDC is just one thing that, if it is activated, would initiate broader local government reforms. And we need a national bipartisan.
Very well. All right. Thank you, Dr. Odro. You have a question?
You see, the problem is that the president is jumping the gun. 55.3 becomes relevant if you invoke Article 2431.
Which of them is entrenched that you need?
It's not about entrenching.
No, but you see,
because you see the
one that is unentrenched can easily be done in Parliament.
What I'm saying is that's 243. It's not entrenched.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying is that the local assembly architecture is built on non-partisanship.
Yes.
Then 55 is about political parties. What political parties can do. And 55.3 is saying that political parties can do all but sponsor a person to a local government. Because the local government structure is non-partisan. Now, so I think that the first thing is to start to continue to work with the non-partisan nature of the local governance structure, but make it responsive to the people. That is, the people must elect those who they want to represent them at the local government level. And that we can do it without going through a referendum. Simple. And then when we get that, you leave the larger question of whether, after practicing this local government system at the local level where it is non-partisan, you still believe that, no, it's not meeting our legitimate and reasonable expectations, then you then go and ask for the people whether or not, because the people themselves have spoken in a CDD survey.
Yeah.
80% of Ghanaians said that they didn't want partisanship at the local level. So I think that the president himself is erecting a block.
Okay.
And let me clear this myth.
Quickly.
NDC is not against the election of this chief executive. We are in parliament. And a bill was actually introduced. A constitutional amendment to Article 2431 was actually introduced. Except that we said that, look, if you are going to amend 243, non-partisanship, because we don't want partisanship there, then we will not take the constitutional amendment into 243. We will ask you to go and do the referendum first before you come. Because we don't support the partisanship nature. But 2431, an amendment was introduced by
local
honorable, no,
Attorney General.
Attorney General, Gloria Akufo. Again, we have said that when you amend 243, you have to amend a lot of subsequent provisions.
Yes, that was
for instance, tenure of office must go.
Yeah.
Okay, the president's power to sack must go. Okay, whether or not the assembly can by 2/3 majority remove this chief executive who has been elected popularly must be considered. So we have said a lot of things about that.
Okay, all right. We will end this with but I want Dr. Odo to stay on because he's also a lawyer, and we'll have a legal discussion brief before we go. The E-levy takes effect tomorrow, right? But there's a matter at the Supreme Court. Now, last week, the plaintiffs, Haruna Idrisu, Kujeto Ablakwa, and one other, and one MP whose name escapes me at the moment. I think it's yes, Mama Yaga. It's the three are in the Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of the E-levy. Now, they have also filed for an injunction preventing the GRA from implementing this. There's an argument, constitutional argument debate, as to whether this filing for injunction acts as a stay or as a stay of execution and prevents the GRA from going ahead to charge the E-levy from tomorrow. Mr. Abba.
It's one of the debates in the law that has raged on for a very long time.
Because as it stands, the matter will be called on the 4th of May. Implementation starts tomorrow. Should the GRA be implementing this despite the court matter?
Good. So this is where issues of separation of powers would come in, issues of respect for the court would come in, and all that. In fact, I'm telling you there wouldn't be any consensus on this matter. Because one school of thought has always been that as soon as an injunction is filed, the status quo ante must be preserved until the court has determined the matter, has made a pronouncement on it. Another school of thought thinks that if the injunction application is so frivolous, right, and the court hasn't made an order, why should you go, why should you stay? Otherwise, some people can just use these things to scatter
frustrate processes.
Yes, right. And if you go ahead, will it be seen as contempt of court? And if it is also an executive action, would the judiciary be seen to be encroaching so much in the executive action? So these are just the questions for people to think about. I refuse to give a position. Because the debate always goes on.
I can't give an answer to this.
Oh, running away from this.
No, it's not that we are running away. It is a debate.
I understand.
You
understand.
Yes, you are not a lawyer fully. I'm a law student. You are a law student. That debate is there.
I can't give an answer to it. Because you see, out of respect to the courts, if a motion or an application is made to the court to injunct a person from the performance of a duty, then out of respect, the parties here, and I say parties here, to me individual persons, would restrain themselves from acting in a way that would impugn on the dignity and respect
for the courts.
It's not about an order of the court. But again, I know that in practice and in jurisprudence, it is very difficult to restrain a body or a person vested with the statutory power or constitutional power of performing a function from performing that function. You see, this is difficult.
It's a tightrope.
Unless that function is going to be performed illegally.
That would be unwarranted.
Then you are going to say that. In fact, that application will be in the nature of quetemet. That if he is not restrained, the illegality that he will be committing will be said that it will be difficult to remedy. Okay? So
that's where you end it.
So that's where you end it.
Dr. Rosa, you have the last bite on this issue. That's why I'm inviting you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll take the same position as
lawyers always navigate to the constitutional questions in the right tight manner.
No, let us wait and see what the Supreme Court will say on this matter.
Then we'll follow. Yes. So my position is that once the injunction has not been granted, it doesn't bar the state institution from executing their constitutional mandate. But I also think that it will be fair and just for them to hasten slowly. So we leave it to the court and we leave it to the parties.
Of course.
Especially when the Supreme Court is involved. We have to be very careful.
Because the difficulty is that when they don't hasten slowly and then they implement on 1st May and the Supreme Court
rules on 4th May.
Otherwise, then they would have caused a difficulty of reversing
what has already been done. A typical lawyer's answer, it depends. It depends. So that's how we wrap up today's edition of the big issue. Big happy birthday to a call. He's celebrating his 30th birthday on the 30th of April. So that's a big one.
My daughter
of City TV.
My daughter will celebrate her birthday on Tuesday.
Yes.
So,
okay. Another one. Lydia Enu, of course, also. And of course, I'm also going into mine this week. So it's a good one. Yes. And of course, belated birthday to Evans Oche as well. Yeah. So I had in studio Alhaji Nusaf Seni of the NDC, former Member of Parliament, Tamale Central. Alexander Aban, former MP, Gomwa West. I also had Dr. Odro Osan. Earlier on, we had Labour analyst, former executive secretary of the NLC, Dr. Adongo Baudia. Franklin Kujo of Imani Africa was also on. And we had Dr. Kujo Pumpuni Asante of the CDD also on. Keep watching CCTV for the very best in program. And of course, the technical crew, Kujo Ajiman and Gifty Asan, my director. Same time next week, Godfred Akotobo, for God willing, will be back in his seat.